Number 10. Portia De Rossi. In her 2010 groundbreaking memoir, Unbearable Lightness, Portia De Rossi reveals the pain and illness that haunted her for decades, from a time she was a 12-year-old girl working as a model in Australia through her early rise to fame as a cast member of the hit television show Ally McBeal. She also detailed her struggles with and while living in the public eye, and recounted how she survived on 300 calories a day and took 20 laxatives daily, trying to maintain a weight of 82 pounds. According to her memoir, Portia both starved herself and putting her life in danger and concealing from herself and everyone around her the seriousness of her illness, and described the elaborate rituals around food that came to dominate hours of every day. The actress did this all while terrified that the truth of her sexuality would be exposed in the tabloids, and revealed the heartache and fear that comes from living a life in the closet, which was only magnified by her unrelenting desire to be thinner, more in control of her body, and the number of calories she consumed and spent. But it wasn't all bad. Portia also recounted how falling in love with Ellen DeGeneres helped her develop a healthy body image, embrace her sexual orientation, and gain inner peace. Number 9. Janice Dickinson. A strange encounter with Bill Cosby in 1982 was described in the 2002 memoir No Lifeguard on Duty by the self-anointed world's first supermodel Janice Dickinson. In her book, she reveals real moments that she experienced with Cosby and goes into great detail when it comes to taking back the narrative. Janice mentioned how Cosby allegedly answered his hotel room door in nothing but a towel and kissed her. He then took her to dinner and suggested that she follow him back upstairs. The memoir was pretty explosive at the time and would come back into relevance in 2018 when she chose to testify in court to Cosby's crimes. The comedian was once known to millions as America's Dad, famous for his clean brand of family comedy and his award-winning work with children's programming. So Janice's memoir really did help expose Cosby's double life, as eventually more than 50 women came out claiming that the star slipped them illicit substances and took advantage of them while they were unconscious. And in April of 2018, an 80-year-old Cosby was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison, although he would eventually be released in 2021. Number 8. Corey Feldman. In his deeply personal 2013 memoir, child star and teen heartthrob Corey Feldman exposes the darkness that loomed behind his rise to fame. Although he undoubtedly had a successful career, famous friendships, and high-profile relationships, Corey reveals a side to his star-studded life that no one knew about, and it's full of tragedy. He came from a broken family that he emancipated himself from at the age of 15. As a teenager, he suffered physical, emotional, and sexual violence. The Stand By Me star was also arrested and struggled with addiction throughout his time as a successful working actor. But most shockingly, Corey also implied that his close friend Corey Haim's lifelong battle with addiction was the result of being preyed upon by a powerful older man. Following the book's publication came rampant speculations about the identity of the offender, and it's something that readers still argue about to this day. His memoir, Choreography, weaves a heartbreaking story of pain and survival that reveals just how dark the industry can really be. Number 7. Chris Savino. Once it was exposed, the massive scandal that was a PR nightmare for Nickelodeon was akin to the network's own version of Harvey Weinstein. In 2017, Nick was forced to fire one of its most prominent showrunners, Chris Savino, over allegations made by at least a dozen women. Savino, who has been in the business since the early 90s, previously worked on such animated shows as Dexter's Laboratory and the Powerpuff Girls, and was the creator of Nick's second highest rated kids show at the time, Loud House, which centers on a boy's life while dealing with a house full of sisters. According to Cartoon Brew, as many as 12 women came forward to accuse Savino of predatory behavior, including unwanted sexual advances and threats of blacklisting after the relationships with co-workers had ended. What's even more disturbing is that the site said that the reports date back at least a decade. One woman said that she didn't accept an offer to work at Nickelodeon simply because Savino worked there. She alleged that when they both worked for Disney, he sent her explicit text messages and photos, and once offered her a job in exchange for inappropriate things. And Walker Farrell, the director of BoJack Horseman, also came forward with her own Savino horror story from the early 2000s, when both of them worked at Cartoon Network. Just goes to show you how cases involving power and inappropriate behavior infect almost every corner of Hollywood. Number 6. Shania Twain. The Grammy-winning country singer confronted her childhood demons when she wrote her 2011 memoir, From This Moment On, describing how her stepfather Jerry was physically, sexually, and verbally violent towards her and her mother Sharon. In a frank and often shocking autobiography, the singer reveals graphic and personal details about her rags to riches story and the price of ambition and success. Throughout her memoir, it also became clear that Shania experienced a harrowing degree of poverty and hunger. For instance, she claimed that sometimes there was only bread and mustard for her and her 4 siblings to eat, and they often wore plastic bread bags to cover their shoes to protect their feet during winter, and regularly went to school without lunch. The singer also had to deal with a double betrayal in her life. She wrote about the heartache that she went through when she found out about the affair between her husband of 14 years, Robert Lang, and her best friend. As a result, Shania became so distraught that she literally lost her voice to spasmodic dysphonia, which left her unable to sing. So her memoir explores how she worked through all that heartbreak. Number 5. Jason Biggs. In the early seasons of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on Nickelodeon, Jason Biggs could be heard voicing lead turtle Leonardo, but scandal quickly erupted at the network when it was revealed that his social media activity was offensive enough that there were many calls to Nickelodeon to protest his involvement with the show. So in 2014, after only 2 seasons, he was ultimately replaced by Seth Green on the popular series, and for a good reason. Jason's Twitter in the 2010s was a PR nightmare. In fact, there didn't seem to be any topic too controversial for him to joke about, like a Bachelorette contestant who died, a plane crash, the Pope, women's basketball, and sexually explicit comments about the politician Paul Ryan's wife. But the jokes backfired big time when the official Ninja Turtles Twitter account gave a shout out to Jason's personal account and encouraged their followers to check it out. It's safe to say that the kid-friendly and PG network is not pleased with the immense backlash that they started receiving from parenting groups and conservative bloggers, eventually leading them to release a statement apologizing, while Fox News host Megyn Kelly called the American Pie actor a disgusting pig and called for him to be fired. Ultimately, the network responded to the pressure and gave Jason the boot. Number 4. Leah Remini. A former longtime Scientologist, King of Queens star Leah Remini opened up about her experiences in the church in her 2015 memoir, Troublemaker. As a teenager in the church's Sea organization, Remini said that she was reprimanded for sunning by the pool at the Scientology-run Sandcastle Hotel in Florida, and as a punishment, was taken out to sea on a boat, thrown overboard, and nearly drowned by a group leader. Not only that, but she was also once fined $40,000 after confessing to stealing food from the headquarters 20 years earlier. In her memoir, Leah also made some shocking allegations about several well-known Hollywood celebrities. In fact, she recalled a time that her and her husband, Angelo, spent time at Tom Cruise's Beverly Hills mansion when he invited a group of well-known Scientologists and other celebrities, including the Smiths. She actually called Will and Jada Pinkett Smith famous friends of the church, and even mentioned the Scientology school that they opened, revealing that despite Jada's denial, she is indeed good friends with Tom Cruise and an active member of the controversial religion. Number 3. Victorious. Canadian actor Evan Jogia had his breakthrough role playing Beck Oliver in Victorious, but after Jennette McCurdy's bombshell allegations regarding Dan Schneider, fans really started to question whether or not he had the same experience. In a recent TikTok video, Evan admitted that he did not actually remember filming the series at all, because he was blackout drunk almost every night. Quote, "When you don't remember a single plotline to a single Victorious episode, but you do remember going out partying every night." When one fan added that the show seemed like a fever dream to her, Evan just said, "Me too, and I was there." And when another fan asked, "So Beck was hungover all the time?" he just said yes. This admission was significant because in Jennette's new memoir, she talks about the creator pressuring her to drink while she was underage, allegedly saying, quote, "The Victorious kids get drunk all the time. The iCarly kids are so wholesome. We need to give you guys a little edge." Sometime later, she claims that Schneider got into trouble with Nickelodeon for inappropriate behavior with the young cast and was not allowed to be near the actors anymore, meaning that he had to direct them from a separate control room. So it's entirely possible that he was creeping on more than just one actor. Number 2. Christina Crawford. At the height of her fame in the 1940s, Joan Crawford had a considerable reputation to uphold. She won a 1945 Best Actress Academy Award for the lead role in Mildred Pierce. She lived in a beautiful house in Brentwood, LA, and used her wealth to adopt and raise 4 children, including Christina Crawford. For all of this, Joan was celebrated in the public eye and had extensive magazine spreads about her happy family life. But to her daughter, the facade was a complete lie, and eventually her frustration at the discrepancy between her mother's private existence and her public reputation bubbled over. In 1978, she published Mummy Dearest, which told the truth about her mother's character, that she was a sadistic perfectionist. It was the first tell-all celebrity memoir to talk so openly about childhood, and subsequently was a worldwide sensation upon its release. In fact, it stayed at the top of the New York Times bestseller list for 42 weeks, and even resulted in the 1981 film adaptation starring Faye Dunaway that would go on to become a cult hit. To this day, most people associate Joan Crawford with that infamous scene where she launches into a vicious tirade after discovering Christina's dresses were hung up on wire clothes hangers. So it's safe to say that her reputation never recovered. And coming in at number 1, Rose McGowan. In her 2018 memoir Brave, the outspoken actress takes readers behind the scenes of her life in Hollywood, where she has become known as one of the fiercest and realest women fighting to expose the ugly truth about Harvey Weinstein and the systematic misogyny that has defined the industry for so long. The most outspoken of all of Weinstein's accusers, McGowan opens up about when she first met the movie mogul at the Sundance Film Festival, but only refers to him in her book as the monster. She was at the premiere of her 1997 film Going All the Way when he sat behind her. The next day she was sent to his hotel room, where the two talked about films and her acting goals. But as he walked her out, McGowan writes that he pushed her into his bathroom, forcibly backed her into the wall, and ripped off her clothes. But most shockingly, after the incident, the actress was driven to a photo op with her Phantoms co-star Ben Affleck. When she told him what happened, he simply said, "Damn it, I told him to stop doing that." Her memoir couldn't be more relevant to current events, as to date, 84 women have come forward with allegations against Weinstein, and he is currently serving a prison sentence of 23 years. Number 10, iCarly stunt double. If you want to know something that proves the people at Nickelodeon only care about money, I've got a scandal for you that was almost swept under the rug entirely. In 2014, a stunt woman from iCarly claimed that the production ruined her career by recklessly dropping her from far too high above the ground, causing some really gruesome injuries. In a stunt gone wrong, Katina Waters was supposed to be dropped slowly down from the ceiling for an episode of iCarly in 2011. She was supposed to be slowly lowered to the ground while still attached to a wire. Instead, she claims that the person operating the descender machine dropped her without warning and she crashed to the floor. The medical consequences of the incident were pretty horrific. It caused severe injuries to her leg, including fractured bones and torn ligaments. But the long-term effects on her health were even worse for her career. Waters was a highly successful stunt actor who performed in dozens of TV shows and movies, but of course she missed out on a lot of work following the incident. Subsequently, she decided to sue the producer, Schneider's Bakery, plus Nickelodeon and MTV networks for pain, suffering, and loss of earnings. And she made the right decision, as it later emerged that it wasn't the first time something like that had happened on the show. Number 9, the GAC. After seeing countless celebrities being slimed on TV for years, there was an extremely high demand for Nickelodeon to release their iconic gooey green sludge to the public. This led the network to release what they called GAC into toy stores across the country in 1992, much to the delight of 90s kids everywhere. The product wasn't exactly slime that they had on the Nick shows, it was more like a squishy putty that made funny noises when you pressed it between your hands. Kids also loved the name GAC because not only was it onomatopoeia, but it also just sounded like how the product felt. However, the branding turned out to be a highly controversial decision, as the name itself was common street lingo for illicit street substances. In fact, it was literally a term for the substance that goes onto a spoon. The story goes that while someone on the Nick crew was working with the then nameless slime one day, they nicknamed it GAC, which became a naughty inside joke on set because of its meaning. Game show host Mark Summers was in on the joke too, and eventually started saying it live on air, but Nickelodeon's marketing marketing department allegedly had no idea and just cluelessly went along with it. Number 8. The voice of Dora. The network had a really big mess on their hands when Caitlin Sanchez, the teenager who starred on Dora the Explorer until she reached puberty, alleged that when she made the deal with Nickelodeon to voice the iconic character, she was given just 22 minutes to sign the contract without an experienced lawyer. The young star did so under duress, with the alleged promise that she'd receive residuals for her work, plus money from merchandising. This was in 2007, years before Dora the Explorer was established as an $11 billion global brand. So in 2010, Caitlin sued Nickelodeon and MTV networks for making her sign what she believed was a terrible contract that conned her out of millions, specifically citing unpaid work hours, as well as being paid only $40 for promotional appearances. The legal battle made headlines throughout the world thanks to statements made by Caitlin's attorney that if Nickelodeon refuses to pay up by a certain date, he would expose their humiliating secrets. But the young voice actor ended up settling for $500,000, but then tried to re-sue because she and her family thought that the lawyer acted fraudulently and didn't tell her that most of the settlement would be eaten by taxes and lawyer fees. But to fans, the whole settlement just proved that the network certainly had something to hide. Number 7. Holly Madison. Former Playboy bunny and Girls Next Door star Holly Madison dished on how oppressive life with Hugh Hefner really was in 2015's Down the Rabbit Hole. Madison described the many bizarre rules and rituals that Hefner imposed upon his girlfriends. For instance, that they needed to wear matching flannel pajamas, engage in group, dressed in tiny skirts and bralettes, and had a daily curfew of 9 p.m. The memoir tells the story of Madison's time with Hefner from 2001 to 2008 and its aftermath. She goes into great detail about the reality of her life behind the cameras, how her depression in the Playboy mansion reached harrowing depths, yet she felt trapped there. She also opened up about her unwillingness to admit to anyone how sad she really was, and Hefner's emotional control over her. The book also explores her time on the reality show The Girls Next Door and the weirdness that was pop culture in the early 2000s. When speaking about her book, Holly said, quote, "I felt like I had something to say about being in the midst of that whole thing that was going on where Paris Hilton and Jessica Simpson and Kendra was so celebrated, and I was a part of it too, for being dumb on TV. Part of the reason I wanted to write the book was to show the other side of it," which goes to show you just how much of it was all for the cameras. Number 6. Zoey 101. The show was a boarding school set dramedy that hit Nickelodeon in January of 2005. Starring as protagonist Zoe Brooks, Jamie Lynn Spears was reportedly brought on by its creator Dan Schneider, all because she looked a lot like her older sister and superstar Britney Spears. But little did fans know there was actually a scandal brewing behind the set, as its star was just 16 when she fell pregnant, which would have been a bombshell for the very PG show. In her memoir, Things I Should Have Said, Jamie Lynn Spears confessed that her team decided that her pop star sister should not be told about her pregnancy because it was too risky. Quote, "The entire Spears team was already caught up in my sister's PR difficulties, and everyone around me just wanted to make this issue disappear. From there, her family and management pulled her out of school until they could figure out what to do next, and even took away her phone for fear that the news would get out. As a result, the actress said that even her father stopped talking to her." But once the news was released, Nickelodeon immediately released a statement saying, "We respect Jamie Lynn's decision to take responsibility in this sensitive and personal situation." And after wrapping shooting for the 4th season of Zoey 101, the network cancelled the series altogether. Number 5. Sharon Stone. She became a Hollywood icon and a household name after her role in Basic Instinct, and in a 2021 memoir, The Beauty of Living Twice, she finally reveals the vulnerability behind her femme fatale persona. She goes into great detail about her experiences in Hollywood, like how she was tricked into that famous shot in Basic Instinct, and ill-equipped for fame when it finally came to her. She was also routinely taken advantage of in the male-dominated film industry. She claims that the filmmakers were not entirely honest about what they captured with the camera, and so they didn't have her complete consent to put that scene in the film. Quote, "I do think we have to create a think tank that really addresses what is a crime, what is a felony, what is consent." The name of her memoir actually comes from a life-changing brain hemorrhage that she suffered in 2001 that almost killed her. It left her without the basic ability to function, and she ended up losing her family, her career, and a huge part of her life, which she had to start again from the ground up. Stone also talks about how she went through a childhood of and violence to a career in an industry that actually brought back a lot of those memories for her, although in Hollywood it was all hidden under the cover of money and glamour. Number 4. Angelique Bates. The actress who was one of the original cast members on Nick's sketch comedy show All That exposed the reality behind the cameras when she spoke to the Shade Room in 2016. Angelique explains some of the horror she endured, such as physical, emotional, and mental mistreatment from her mother in front of producers who not only turned the other cheek, but strongly urged her to just accept the violence and remain silent. She said that she was only 12 years old when the nightmare began, and that the producers and cast members could hear her yelling, but nothing was done to help her. According to Angelique, Child Protective Services did eventually show up in 1996, but she said that the adults on set pressured her to stay silent. Possibly in an attempt to muddy the waters or save her own skin, Angelique's mother, Dee Bates, came forward in support of her daughter, although she tried to shift the blame onto the network. Whatever the case with her mother's questionable side of the story, the former child star also explained that she was pretty much released from her contract at age 15 and claimed that she was blackballed by the entertainment industry as a result. But to this day, Nickelodeon have never come forward with an official response to the accusations. Number 3. Jennette McCurdy. Described as both heartbreaking and hilarious, iCarly star Jennette McCurdy's bluntly titled memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died, gives fans a glimpse into what really went on behind the cameras, something that up until now fans have only been able to speculate about. Jennette exposes her traumatic experiences on Nickelodeon and the disturbing truth about how she was mistreated by her mother, who pushed her to be a child star, noting that the persona she was known for throughout her youth and her young adult life was a front forced upon her by her mom, who, in addition to everything else, was extremely physically inappropriate with both her and her brother, even when they were teenagers. Jennette also discusses the perils of young fame and reveals that she developed anorexia as a child, and talks about why she ultimately quit acting altogether. She also details numerous instances where she felt exploited as a teen actor, both on and off set. The actress refers to the person behind the demands as simply the creator throughout the memoir, never naming them. She simply describes them as mean-spirited, controlling, and terrifying, calling a time when she was filming an episode of iCarly that he insisted that she wear a bikini instead of a one-piece swimsuit, which she preferred. The revelations in her new book are absolutely shocking, and they really expose the traumatic experience of being a child star. Number 2. Jennette McCurdy. The iCarly star recently released her new memoir, which has been described as both heartbreaking and hilarious. The blunt title, I'm Glad My Mom Died, shocked fans upon its release, because it reveals what really went on behind the cameras, something that up until now fans have only been able to really speculate about. Jennette exposed her traumatic experiences on Nick, and the disturbing truth about how she was mistreated by her mother, who pushed her to be a child star, noting that her own persona that she was known for throughout her youth and her young adult life was all a front forced upon her by her mom, who in addition to everything else was extremely physically inappropriate with her. Jennette also discusses the perils of young fame and reveals that she developed an eating disorder as a child, and talks about why she ultimately quit acting altogether. She also goes into great detail of numerous instances where she felt exploited as an actor, both on and off set, describing the creator as mean-spirited, controlling, and terrifying. The former Nick star recalled a time when she was filming an episode of iCarly that he insisted that she wear a bikini instead of a one-piece swimsuit, which she was much more comfortable with. Number 1. Drake and Josh. This show was one of the most popular shows on Nickelodeon in the early 2000s. Starring Drake Bell and Josh Peck, the sitcom was one of the network's most successful projects from that time. So when the truth finally came out, fans were understandably left disillusioned and upset. Nobody knew that behind the scenes, Josh heavily struggled with addiction. Looking to feel better about himself, the actor explained in an interview that he lost 127 pounds in an 18-month time span while filming the show. But when that didn't bring him happiness, he admitted that he turned to alcohol and illicit substances for help. But that was nothing compared to the revelation that his co-star was caught grooming young fans. In July of 2021, Drake Bell pled guilty to attempted endangering of children and disseminating harmful materials to juveniles after a young woman came forward and accused him of predatory behavior. The 19-year-old, who chose to remain anonymous, claimed that he began talking to her when she was 12. The actor managed to get away with 2 years on probation and 200 hours of community service. But at 36 years old, Drake Bell's reputation is now irreparably tarnished.